It's time for Reason.
I mean, if he's a socialist, then being a civil rights attorney, being a lawyer, every bit of money that he brings in, he should probably donate. I mean, like all of it. He doesn't deserve any. He should be back to that level again, right? Because there are people that live at that level, and that's unfortunate for them. He should probably be living on food stamps because all the revenue and profits that he generates from his legal services, he should probably donate and give to somebody else.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
When I get on my knees and pray, we don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. You know what I really enjoy? Like, it's just warm inside. It just makes me feel really good is when, conservatism ends up being the prevailer at the end of the day. Welcome into the Voice of Reason. Boy, we got a lot to get to today. Broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. We're also on TV as well, KGPT TV, channel 2610. Good morning. Welcome aboard. Great to have you along today. It is our pre-Friday celebration. It has been a crazy week today, this week. We are still coming down from election time. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to the elections. We have one of the big candidates coming on the show today that we will talk about. And, of course, he made the news, kind of one of the more controversial candidates. No, I'm not talking about Kris Kobach, but we will be having Steve Watkins from the 2nd Congressional District coming on the show. He is the Republican candidate after the 7-candidate race that happened on Tuesday. Now, he is the one that was apparently some were concerned about his comments because it started to come out that he had allegedly, now we're going to ask him about all this, met with Democrats before he ended up running as a Republican in that race, that his wife had worked for Planned Parenthood and that he is very pro-choice as a Republican and that he may have some more progressive tendencies as a Republican. Now, he is the Republican candidate. And he's going up against Sharice Davids, who is, how did she identify herself as? What was it, a Native American gay woman or transgender woman or something? I don't know. It was something weird. But as the Democrat in that race, so a very interesting race that's going to be happening up in the 2nd Congressional District. We have Steve Watkins coming on the show today at 7:30 to chat a little bit about that race. Plus, in the 8 o'clock hour, Kimbriell Kelly is going to be joining us from the Washington Post, as the Washington Post actually did a study about crime rates here in the Wichita area, so we'll talk about that coming up today. So it's going to be a big show, lots to get to today. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. What makes me warm and cozy inside, that, it just makes you smile a little bit. Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez coming here to Kansas, coming to Wichita, bringing in the rally, 4,000 people showing up. It's a really big deal. Everybody's excited about it, and everybody's ready for the big blue wave and the progressivism to end up happening. Well, that didn't happen, of course. It's not going to happen, of course. And according to the Daily Caller, that Democratic Socialist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had endorsed several candidates in the primary election, but 3 out of the 5 that she endorsed ended up losing their races. Oh, wait a second. The endorsement. Now, remember, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she is the one where she's supposed to be the new face of the Democratic Party. She's the one that says she has no idea about geopolitics. She has no idea about what's going on with Israel. She has no idea about anything economically, obviously, because, she just says that we could increase taxes to a really, really high rate, and then we could spend it on social programs. That's supposed to be a really good idea. She has no idea really about anything, but she's going to be the new face of the Democratic Party, and she went out and did her major endorsement. She's not even an elected official yet. She's not even an elected official yet. But apparently, people care about her opinion on different races throughout the state because she ended up winning 15,000 votes. Look, we had more votes in our county commission race here in Sedgwick County than we did for her winning the election for her, 12th Congressional District in New York for the Bronx area. And now apparently she is the national sensation. The Democrats absolutely love her, and she's all about it. So what did she do? She capitalized on that. Capitalism, beautiful thing, right? Capitalized on that, went around, did her state tours, endorsed a whole bunch of candidates, and in the primary elections on Tuesday, only 2 out of the 5 that she actually endorsed ended up moving on. James Thompson here in the state of Kansas being one of them. Now, what does that say about something? The fact that we have one of the few candidates that, I mean, it was given. He was already going to win. Even if Alexandria didn't even come out here, James Thompson was planned on winning. He was going to win. He had the name. Laura Lombard was not going to have a chance of winning. He already had Bernie Sanders come out, what was it, last year? That came out here trying to change the state purple, and James Thompson got to introduce him at the big rally up in Topeka, and that was the big movement. Bernie Sanders has already been on board with James Thompson. It was nothing new. We knew that James Thompson was going to win. He had full-time paid staff going on all this last year campaigning for him during a non-election season, and now he's out there complaining that he has no money, but he's gotten his name out there. So it was already given he was going to win, but they lump it up to the fact that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez ended up endorsing James Thompson. I find that kind of ironic. Oh, look at that. He won. It must be because Alexandria endorsed him. She is the new sensation, baby. She's the one that's going to end up taking the Democrats into victory across the country. So she endorsed 5 candidates. 3 of them lost on Tuesday night. To me, that just makes me kind of warm and cozy. Because, I mean, it has nothing to do with Alexandria. It really has to do with the local election. It has to do with the campaign tactics. It has to do with the mentality of that district at that time. But I just kind of find it warm and cozy. They try and lump it up to Alexandria is endorsing candidates. They must do really, really well. And then they end up losing. Is that going to make them rethink? Is it going to reground them? You know, the celebrity status that happens when somebody makes it really big, really quickly at a really young age. They get recognized with their singing voice. They have a talent that's beyond what anybody else has. They're doing something really special. And they get this all-time fame at a really young age, and then they go absolutely berserk and nuts. And then they think that people care about them, and then they realize that nobody does care about them, and then they fall really bad, and they end up getting grounded pretty quickly. That's what's going to happen with Alexandria Cortez. She was a bartender, had never been in politics before, ended up running, won by 15,000 votes, a total of receiving 15,000 votes because she did a grassroots campaign. Kudos to her on that one. Ended up being beating a 10-year incumbent for the Democrat Party, one of the part of the Democratic leadership. And now she's a national sensation, touring around, and she thinks in her mind, oh, look, people love me. I got elected as never being in politics before. I ended up beating a very strong, very powerful incumbent. Look at that. I'm going to be the sensation. I'm going to be the new voice. I'm doing all these interviews. I'm touring around and endorsing candidates. I'm going to be the big kahuna, baby. I'm going to be the big deal. And she ends up losing 3 out of the 5 endorsements. Ocasio-Cortez went on tour around the U.S. endorsing candidates Abdul El Sayed for governor of Michigan, Farouz Saeed of Michigan's 11th Congressional District, Cori Bush from Missouri's 1st Congressional District, and James Thompson for Kansas's 4th Congressional District. I don't know if you're aware or not. There is a very, very strong Muslim population in the Michigan area. I grew up just south of the Michigan border in the Bowling Green, Toledo area, and it's really about a half hour from the Michigan border. And one of the largest mosques in the region, where there's nothing bad about it. I'm not saying that it was good or bad or indifferent. I'm just saying there's a very strong Muslim population, a totally different environment than kind of what we see around here. And it was very interesting to watch. I mean, I'd be driving from Bowling Green to Toledo all the time, which is about a 20-minute drive north, and you're driving, and then all of a sudden, this massive mosque is right there on the side of the road. And it's actually really beautiful. It's really, really cool building. But there is a very strong Muslim population, and they have a very good stronghold in the Michigan politics up there. Now, I don't like the state of Michigan, and it has nothing to do with the fact that there's a strong Muslim population. Being a Buckeye, I have a really hard time supporting Michigan, and because of Michigan University and the Wolverines and all that, it's just a totally different story. But there is a very strong Muslim population, and a lot of them do have a stronghold in the politics for the state of Michigan. And some of those that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez ended up supporting as she appeared at the My Muslim Vote rally in Michigan in July, where she urged voters to send Rashida Tlaib to Congress, and she was the one other than James Thompson that ended up winning her primary on Tuesday evening. So 2 out of the 5 kind of on a losing record there. Batting average not too great so far for Alexandria Cortez. Let's see if she actually focuses enough attention on her general election. You would really think that being in a district to where you beat an incumbent with only 15,000 votes, and there's a population of close to 750,000 registered voters in your district, that you would kind of want to pay attention to focusing on getting elected before you actually go out and think you're kind of a big deal. And that you would actually focus on knocking on doors in your district, that you would focus on, taking care of the people in your district if you're going to represent them. Because I guarantee you, I know this has been a stronghold district for over 10 years, at least 10 years, 18 years by Democrats. But I'd almost be concerned about a somewhat of a moderate Republican coming in, knocking on doors, really beating you at your own grassroots campaign game, and then being able to take that seat. And if that happens, I would laugh so hard at that new sensation of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez getting the nomination and then falling flat on her face, and the socialist movement that they thought they had building actually crumbles right before their eyes. I would laugh pretty hard because that's kind of what needs to happen. No, I don't know if that's going to happen. I know it's a very stronghold Democrat blue district, and she really doesn't maybe have to focus a whole lot more. But someone who wants to represent her district as an elected official, as a congresswoman, how about you focus on your own district? How about instead of going around and doing your national tour, you go to your own district and you knock on the doors and say, I want to be the representative for you. I want to take care of you. But remember, this is the party that has to do lectures and has to do different classes to learn how to relate to their constituents. If you remember, in the state of Iowa and other states around, the Democratic Party had to hold services and had to hold classes and had to hold lectures to teach their elected officials how to relate to their constituency, because they're the elite. They don't care about their constituency. They don't care about their people, and they don't relate to the people that they represent. Now, if you remember in our elected governmental system that the representative, as a republic form of government, is supposed to be of the people, by the people, for the people, so that way they can properly represent the people. They're not supposed to be the elite that are up there saying, oh, you peons, I control you because I'm your representative. You're supposed to be the relatable one. You should be able to knock on any door in your district and totally, for the most part, relate to those individuals. I'm assuming that now that she's in that elite status, coming from being a bartender and now being in that elite status, that she's probably not going to relate too much to her constituency. And I highly doubt that she's going to go out of her way too far to actually try and talk to her constituency specifically, because she's too much enthralled into riding the national bus with Bernie Sanders and going on these national tours and getting a little too high for her britches. I'm just saying, that's probably what's going to happen. She's young. Now she's popular. She's going to get that celebrity status mentality, and then she's going to fall. And I really, really hope that there's a moderate Republican that is really pushing hard in that district to try and beat her, because that way we can rub it in their face to show that socialism just will not work. And it really is the prime example of socialism, isn't it? Not just her mentality, not her ideology, but the fact that she doesn't care about her district specifically, and that she wants to go on this national tour and represent nationally. That is the big difference. Look at a candidate from Kansas. Look at Ron Estes, Congressman Ron Estes, where he says, you know what, there are things in my district that I'm taking care of. I'm working with the county commission here. I'm working with the state representatives here. I'm working with X, Y, and Z. I'm working on issues that are relevant to my district. What is Alexandria doing? I'm going on a national tour to talk about national issues, to try and bring universal health care, to try and bring universal jobs, to try and raise taxes for everybody, to try and increase that safety net and increase government spending with social programs. I'm doing national things, not necessarily relevant to my district specifically, who I actually represent, but I'm doing it on a national grand scale. The number one main difference between socialism, Democrats, and conservatism in our government. 316-721-8255. Let's get your phone calls this morning. We got a lot to get to today. We do have some audio clips from our governor's candidates, numerous, because we still have Kris Kobach and Jeff Colyer right now waiting for those provisional ballots to come in. We have a week to wait. It's going to be a very painstakingly, I'm not a very patient guy, so a week is kind of painstaking to me. and kind of torturous to me just a little bit. So we have a week to wait until all those provisional ballots are officially in and we get the official count. But we do have some clips from them because as of yesterday, both candidates ended up having a press conference and talking about the race just a little bit. We'll play that in a little bit as well. But until then, let's go to the phones. Line number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
This is Pete.
Hey, good morning, Pete. How are you, sir?
Doing well. Good Friday Eve day to you.
Indeed. You as well.
As far as this Cortez gal, first off, I'd like to know where she's getting the money from to do all this running around. I want to know who's financing her.
Bernie Sanders, the unions, and the socialists. I mean, it's the Democratic Party that is touring them around for them to endorse to try and swing different states into being purple and being more progressive. It's Bernie Sanders and the Democrats that are actually funding this entire tour.
But now, along that same line, you were talking about her not focusing on her people in her district and that kind of a thing.
Sure.
Why should she? The fix is in. Just ask Hillary how that works. The Democrat Party is all about fixing things to have the outcome that they want, and Bernie Sanders should know that as well as anyone. I mean, he was the victim of the Democrat Party fix.
Sure. Well, that's true. And now that she's in with that district, they're going to protect her and they're going to make sure that she's taken care of. And look, I mean, when you talk about, here's some inside baseball when it comes to politicking and campaigning, there are numerous different styles of campaigning. You can either go and knock on the door and be that transparent, open, accessible candidate or elected official by allowing people to see you face to face, shake their hands and talk to them. Or you can just do it by paying for radio and TV advertising and sending mailers to people's mailboxes. So that way you get their information, but you don't necessarily have that personal connection. And that's probably more than likely what's happening with her district. She's paying for TV ads and she's sending in mailers, and that's about it. She doesn't really care about actually going out and talking to people anymore.
Well, what does that tell you? I hope she's the new face of the Democrat Party, because if that's the case, we got nothing to lose as conservatives.
Exactly. We really don't have a whole lot to worry about on that front. I agree. Pete, I appreciate the call very much, my friend. We got to take a break. But you're right. I mean, if that is the new face, then, we don't have to worry too terribly much. And, grassroots campaigning, that's what won her the nomination. And she better remember that if she wants to actually keep the seat, or actually if she wants to get in the seat in the first place, we have to remember she's still not even an elected official yet. But, if she completely forgets the fact that grassroots campaigning wins elections, then I really hope that someone comes in and challenges her as an independent or as a Republican. Maybe an independent's a better way to go in that district. I don't know. And come in and beat her. And then she can fade away to the dark side again because, progressives and socialists, that's just kind of where they need to be. 24 minutes past the hour. This is The Voice of Reason on a Thursday. Stay here.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason on the Mid-America Network.
Bottom of the hour news coming up here in just a minute. When we come back, we'll shift gears a little bit. I just find it fun. It makes me warm and cozy inside that we're winning, yet no one likes to talk about that. That's all right. You know what? It's one of those things where you're surviving, you're succeeding, and I don't care what the rest of the world has to say about it. As conservatives, that's kind of the way that we operate. We know that we're winning. We know our ideas are winning. Even though the mainstream doesn't want to talk about it, it's actually happening. Bottom of the hour news coming up. Your phone calls when we come back. This is The Voice of Reason on a Thursday. Good morning to you. Stay here.
Andy doesn't tolerate name calling.
You could put half of Trump's supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables.
But if you want to try, call the show at 316-721-8255 right now. This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Doing the thing. Good morning to you. Welcome into The Voice of Reason on a Thursday, the pre-Friday celebration rolling right along. I haven't talked about the whole censorship deal with Alex Jones and InfoWars. We're going to try and get out. I actually called and talked with InfoWars and their people just a couple of days ago when this all kind of came to happen. And we're going to try and get Alex Jones on the program to talk about it a little bit. I know he's kind of a busy guy, But we'll talk about that. It is kind of an interesting discussion to be had. Some not caring because, Andy, it's a private business. They can censor whoever they want to because it is a private firm. It goes deeper than that, and I do want to spend some time talking about it. Just we will when we get to. It's kind of been important with election time. Some other news. I don't know if you're aware or not, or if you even care, if it matters in any way, shape, or form. But as of Saturday, August 4th, I have officially been here at the KQAM station and on the air with KQAM for 3 years. Can you believe it? 3 years. Now, if you remember, we started off with a 2-hour program in the middle of the day from noon to 2, which was very difficult. Well, it wasn't difficult. I mean, I enjoyed it, so you didn't have to wake up nearly as early. But, I mean, obviously, being in the middle of the day, people are working and they're going about their day, and it's a very difficult thing. But as of Saturday, the 4th, I've officially been here 3 years. That's crazy. And I will tell you something. This is the longest that I've ever been at one place in my entire career of anything. Usually about 1.5 to 2 years has been kind of my max of when I've moved on to something else. I've been here for 3 years. Kind of wild. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. As we talked about, by the way, the progressive movement, the blue wave, changing the tide, changing the mentality, changing everything. There was a post of the voter turnout when it came to for the 4th Congressional District here with Ron Estes and James Thompson and those two candidates, and seeing the numbers. Now tell me, the blue wave that's happening, the blue wave that's going to be changing, James Thompson winning 19,668 votes against Laura Lombard, who received 10,000 votes. Now remember, this is the side that's politically active and engaged and fired up and excited and wanting to change everything, and everybody's showing up. 19,000 votes for James Thompson. 10,000 votes for Laura Lombard. By himself, how many votes did Representative Ron Estes get in a primary? Oh, yeah, 56,507 votes. Now, going into a general election, tell me how in any way, shape, or form a Democrat or a progressive is going to win that seat and beat Ron Estes. When combined, they got maybe 30,000 votes. We ended up getting a total of almost 70,056 all by himself with Congressman Ron Estes. Tell me again where that blue wave's actually coming from. Newsman Mr. Rick Everett swinging in here as well. Do you think come on, the blue wave's happening, Rick. It's going to happen.
I have no political comment, Andy.
No political comment. Okay. I'm Sweden. I don't have an opinion.
Hey, so no, I was in the coffee room.
Yes.
Getting some delicious homebrewed coffee.
Delicious. I ground up those coffee beans by myself.
You did not.
I did. I went down to Central America.
I'm not giving you credit. I'm not giving Greg Steckline credit.
No.
I'm giving Greg's wife credit.
Oh, well,
because she looks out for us.
That is true. No, see, I went down to Central America and I fought off the drug lords and picked those coffee beans myself.
No, Becky Steckline and I had a conversation about the quality of coffee and the importance of maintaining the go juice.
The go juice.
The go juice.
I don't know how you guys drink that every day. My wife, too.
But
she's
anyway,
all about that stuff.
I shan't digress. I was in the coffee room.
Yes.
And I heard you reminiscing.
Yes.
About the fact that Saturday marks your 3-year anniversary.
Last Saturday did.
Oh, last Saturday.
Yeah, so I've already crossed
so now
that 3-year
you've even got
threshold.
more tenure than I even...
I know. See?
Oh, my gosh.
See, I've already passed my 3-year threshold.
All right, so at any rate, I just wanted to let you know...
Yes.
You've done some phenomenal things since you've been here. In
Well,
fact, some newsworthy things. In fact, stay tuned at the 7 o'clock news as you are making my newscast this morning.
I'm making the newscast.
Yes.
Wow.
Stay tuned.
Breaking news right there.
All right, there you go.
It's going to be big stuff. Well, thank you. Yeah, no, it's been fun. 3 years, rocking and rolling the way we do right here at the KQAM airwaves, and we're only getting bigger and better. We absolutely love it and appreciate all the support, by the way, for that. 316-721-8255. Representative Ron Estes, by the way, receiving, again, 56,000 votes in his election, and no way Democrats are going to be able to beat that. When it comes to the governor's race, as you know, Kris Kobach up by Governor Jeff Colyer by 191 votes. That's it, 191 votes. Yet there are still, 5,000 or 6,000 provisional ballots, mail-in ballots that have not been counted as of yet. They have 1 week to do so. The 16th, a week from yesterday, is the deadline for them to count the provisional and the mail-in ballots to go through and ensure all the numbers are correct from all the districts, and then we will have our answer. This is going to be a painful gruesome 1 week of waiting until we get the final number. And then if one decides to challenge it, if one decides to go for a recount or a revote and do something of that sort, then it's going to be even longer. But 1 week we have to wait. Both candidates ended up doing a press conference as of yesterday. This is what Kris Kobach had to say.
There are several thousand provisional ballots still out there, so the final number will change. It won't be 191 votes a week from now. The provisional ballots will be added to the total, those provisionals that count that way. So it is certainly possible that the result of the race could change. But that said, it is imperative that the Republican Party not stand still for a week. We must begin running the race that is before us. Unlike some states that have the luxury of 5 months, 6 months after the primary to run into the general election, Kansas is not one of those states. We have only 3 months, and if we spend a week of that 3 months doing absolutely nothing, then we will have given our opponents a sizable lead in the foot race that we have.
You know, and that's a really great point, and I'm glad he mentioned that, is the fact that, you know what, we're waiting on the actual nominee. It could be Kris Kobach, it could be Jeff Colyer, but you know what, we have an independent that's really pushing hard about the division of the two-party system, and we need to go third party and go independent and change up the flavor, and that sounds all fine and hunky-dory, but he's pushing hard. We have a Democrat that is a far-left fringe socialist Democrat that is going to be pushing hard and attacking Republicans. Now, if we actually had an actual nominee for the Republican side, there would already be TV ads trashing the Republican for Brownback-isms happening in Topeka. We know it's going to happen. We know it's going to be there. So it's our duty as Republicans, and here's the big thing, and Kris Kobach mentions this in his press conference, and I want to play the audio clip in a second here. Here's what we have to do, and I open up the lines to you to make sure that we're good on this. That we're good, that we're happy, that we're moving forward, is that we continue to advance conservatism even though we don't know the candidate. Whether it's going to be Jeff Colyer, whether it's going to be Kris Kobach, it's going to be one of those two, and that we continue to push our agenda, that we have still House statewide races that are trying to push for the general election against the Democrat, that we have the governor's race that we try and beat down the Democrat and try and bring them down a little bit. We have to continue to push, and the big question is, and I want to make sure, and I want to get your thoughts on this. The big question is, will you support the Republican candidate regardless of which candidate it is? Will you support Kris Kobach if he's the nominee? Will you support Jeff Colyer if he's the nominee? And I will tell you right now, whether it's Kris Kobach, whether it's Jeff Colyer, I will be 110% in support of that Republican candidate because we need a Republican in the governorship. Now, we've heard some calls, and I know that we've done the polls and we've seen the polling, and obviously it's a very divided race within 300,000 votes coming in, and we're down to 191 vote difference. There is a very close race. People have very strong opinions. Some of those people that we even heard from yesterday on the show said that the reason they voted for Jeff Colyer, it wasn't because they liked Jeff Colyer necessarily, but because they hated and despised Kris Kobach. As Republicans, whether you like Jeff Colyer, whether you like Kris Kobach, as a Republican, that Republican candidate, whichever one it may be, will be more in line with your views, even though you may not agree with everything they do, obviously. And that's okay. Even though if you may not agree with even 60% of what they believe in, you are going to fall more in line with their views than you will with the independent that's going to be a left-wing progressive, that's going to be the Democrat that is a far left-wing progressive. You will fall more in line with that Republican than anybody else. So the question I have for you, because I want to make sure, as we go around, look, we always beat each other up in the primary, which is a good thing. The Achilles heel of the Republican Party is when we divide ourselves in the general election because we get so emotional, we get so tied up, and we become so angry that our candidate lost in the general election is that we refuse to embrace and support the Republican candidate going into the general against the real opposition. The sparring during the primary race is just that. It's sparring. The Republican Party has the big umbrella. We have different ideas on where we should go and what we should do. We spar, we beat each other up, we take a few shots at each other, we do our thing. Sometimes it gets a little heated, sometimes it gets a little personal. Is it right? Not necessarily, it's not right, but it happens. Because we're the ones that aren't afraid to show and express our views and opinions. But regardless of whatever happens there, when we go to the general election, we remember who the real enemy is. And yes, I do call it an enemy because progressivism, liberalism, socialism is a threat to America. It is the greatest threat to the United States that we could possibly have, more so than terrorism abroad, more so than the drug lords coming across our borders because they're allowed to do so because of progressivism, more so than any other threat that we could possibly have. More so than climate change. Ha! Progressivism is the most dangerous ideology that we can have, and that is our real enemy. And if we're up against a Democrat in the general election that believes in progressivism, that is the ultimate threat. Regardless of what you believe personally about the character of an individual, regardless of whether you like the candidate or not, we rally, we unite, and we vote party over person when it comes to the general election. I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, but I stand by it through and through that you vote party over person when it comes to a general election. We beat the Democrat, we beat that ideology, and we stand on Republicanism going into the general. I want to make sure, and I want to hear from you, are you going to support either candidate regardless of which one becomes the nominee in the governor's race? 316-721-8255. Let's take a phone call here, shall we? Line number 1. Good morning. What's your name? Good morning, Andy. It's Nick. Hello. Hello. Going once. I thought I heard something. Are you there? Maybe not. Give me a call back. I want to hear from you. 316-721-8255. Actually, I think I potted up the wrong one there for the first part. Give me a call back. I want to hear from you. Are you going to support the Republican or the Democrat? Not the Democrats, but are you going to support the Republican regardless of which candidate it may be? Phones are lighting up here. Let's go back to them. Line number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning, Andy. It's Nick.
Hey, good morning, Nick. What's going on, sir?
Oh, you can hear me this time.
I can hear you now. You're all good.
For those of you that are at the bar at 6 a.m., I got to say, Andy Hoosier, there's no such thing as 110%.
There's no such thing as 110%.
No, you either give 100% or you're not giving anything at all.
Well, see, I'm with you on that one. I love it. I love it. That is a great point.
So, hey, look at this. I get to vote, hallelujah, for Kris Kobach and Roger Marshall on my ballot. Can you fathom that? That's awesome.
That is awesome. And I tell you what, Nick, I know you did a great grassroots campaign being a candidate for that first congressional district against Roger Marshall. You did a really great grassroots campaign. You traveled a heck of a lot of places in that western part of the state, and you came up short on that one. But you know what? That's when we unite, and you're embracing Roger Marshall for the Republican candidacy. That's
right. We had fun. We got educated, and we're ready to take on the U.S. Senate seat here in 2020. So you got some breaking. Can you play that breaking news thing?
Breaking news right here on The Voice of Reason. That's right. There we are. Breaking news with Nick Reinecker.
Hallelujah.
There we are. I love it. No, it's going to be, I tell you what, it's going to be a great race. And again, I mean, you're supporting Roger Marshall, and whether we get Jeff Colyer or Kris Kobach in that general election, we're going to be supporting that Republican candidate.
Yes, sir. Hey, listen, the primaries are over. We're standing together. We're going to get it done. 191 votes. You know, I voted for Kobach. It came down to the wire. I know we disagree on the cannabis issue, but we're going to go headlong, and we're going to keep it together and be Republicans and keep our republic alive. So
see, and that's what it's all about,
you do, Andy. And if you want to give me a ding ding, that's all right. But I got to go.
Hey, well, I love it, Nick. It's always a great time, my friend. I love chatting with you. And you know what? And that's the beauty of the Republican Party. The Democrats are in lockstep with each other. They get their marching orders. They get their talking points. They just do their thing. Republicanism, we have differing views within the party. That's a good thing. The views on hemp or marijuana, the views on taxes, the views on, well, hopefully not taxes or spending, because that's usually why we join the Republican Party, but social issues. There's a difference in Republican views on social issues. There is a difference of opinion within the umbrella of Republicanism. That is why we are the greatest party. That is why we have more opportunity in our party than anywhere else, because the Democrats don't do that. They've tried it, and now you're seeing what's happening. They're divided. They hate each other. That's why they built a wall around the DNC committee or convention last year to keep the Bernie Sanders nuts out, because they didn't want to associate with them, that are now trying to associate with the Democratic Party. It is kind of fun to watch, isn't it? 316-721-8255. 9 minutes to the top of the hour. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Mid-America Network.
I don't know if it'll do any good or not. I'm going to try. I'm going to attempt it. I don't know if it'll do any good or not, but I am going to do another plea to the individuals that vote independent or maybe even a registered libertarian to come back to the light. Come back to the good side. Come back to the Republicans. Come back and help us change the party within. If you disagree with what's happening in the party, help us change it. Don't walk away. I'm going to try and do that plea again. I've done it for a long time. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but I'm going to try. Let's address the issues that we have, the differences that we have, different ideas. I mean, I know that there's a lot of vast differences between libertarianism and conservatism. There's a lot of in line, too. And Republicans and conservatives are more in line with libertarians than any other group, which is why I don't get why they want to leave. And I get that the Republican Party kind of kicked you out, and for that I apologize. That on the grand national scale, many of the Republicans kicked out libertarianism. That's why Ron Paul left the Republican Party. Was he a little bit nuts? Yeah, a little bit. But you know what? He had some really good ideas, too. Luckily, Rand Paul has continued to stick with the Republican Party and continue to fight for what he views is right within the party. That's how we change the party. When you want to change something, you don't walk away from it. You dig deeper and you actually fix it internally. When your car's broken, do you go and just get a new car because, well, you know, the air filter's out, or you know what, the alternator went out? You go out and just buy a new car? No, you dig deeper and you fix it. So that way it's running smooth again. You flush the fluids. You rotate the tires. You do the maintenance on it. You spend the time and the quality and the attention on the vehicle to make sure that it's running smoothly. Those that are leaving the party because they're frustrated, because they don't like it, because there's big government Republicans in the party, because Republicans, there's a lot of Republicans that are establishment members at the federal level or even at the state level, I totally get it. Look at the makeup of our state legislature in the state of Kansas here. There are probably more rhino, moderate, middle-of-the-road Republicans than there are actual conservative Republicans, which is why that we still have high tax rates, which is why we still have crazy amounts of money going towards educational funding, which is why we're running into a 2-year debt and deficit again for the state of Kansas. We have a lot of issues with the Republican majority, and it's not because of Republicanism. It's because of Republicans within the party fighting for non-Republican values. The only way you fix that is to dig deeper, be an active member of the party, and to fix the party from within. We can do it, but libertarians, we need your help. Conservatives that are unaffiliated registered voters, we need your help. Let's do it. Let's do it together. I'm here. You're here. Let's soul hand, sing Kumbaya, and let's make this happen. What do you say? Hour number 2, The Voice Reason. Lots more coming up here. This is The Voice Reason on a Thursday.
It's time for Reason.
I mean, if he's a socialist, then being a civil rights attorney, being a lawyer, every bit of money that he brings in, he should probably donate. I mean, like all of it. He doesn't deserve any. He should be back to that level again, right? Because there are people that live at that level, and that's unfortunate for them. He should probably be living on food stamps because all the revenue and profits that he generates from his legal services, he should probably donate and give to somebody else.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
That's what I'm talking about. Welcome into The Voice of Reason, broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas. On the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM, simulcasting on TV, KGPT TV, channel 2610. Good morning, welcome aboard. It's great to have you along today on a Thursday, the pre-Friday celebration as we roll right along. It's great to have you along today on this beautiful, beautiful day. It's kind of nice and cool. We're getting into fall season. Now, I know that August is going to be like one of the hotter months, like July, and then we start seeing the cool down. But, you know, come on, 67 degrees in the morning really ain't too bad. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join in, we have a big show lined up for you today. Steve Watkins, the 2nd Congressional District Republican candidate, will be joining us at the bottom of the hour to talk about his race, the primary race that just got done and wrapped up as he got the nomination, and going into the general election. Also, some of the issues that were floating around about his campaign as well, I do want to address and ask him about, and to get his statement on those issues. So that's going to be a heated race. As you know, Lynn Jenkins stepping down, and that one needs to remain Republican in order to... Now, look, remember, if you don't like a Republican, if you don't like them, if you don't like the stance they have on an issue, if you don't like a platform that they have on the issue, here's the reason why I advocate for this, and why I said in the last segment why I try and encourage, and I'm advocating and I'm pleading for independents, for unaffiliateds, for libertarians to come and vote with Republicans, to come back to the Republican Party if you left the party, to come to the Republican Party if you've never been with the Republican Party. That's my plea to you. And the reasoning is, we have to remember, whether we like it or not, I don't like it, but that's the matter of the fact, that is the realism of the situation, is that we have a two-party system. That's the way it is. We don't like it. It wasn't intended to be that way. It wasn't supposed to be that way. Our founding fathers warned us very strongly against the parties, but we have a two-party system, Republicans and Democrats. Very, very few times have independents or libertarians ever won an actual office. No libertarians have actually, as far as I'm aware of, have actually won federal elections. There are very few, there's maybe 2 or 3 independents in our Congress? There are very, very few libertarian or independent governors, if any at all. There are very few state legislators as libertarians or independents all over the nation in state legislative seats. It doesn't happen. It's a two-party system. I don't like it. It wasn't supposed to be that way, but that's the reality of the situation. And when you want the louder voice, the loudest voice that you have, in order to rally a group of people to do something, it's got to be, unfortunately, within one of those parties, Republican or Democrat, depending on which one you mostly closer align with. You can be a far fringe conservative Republican. You can be a moderate progressive Republican. But if you're a Republican, then the reason we've signed up to be a Republican is because we believe in basic tendencies of limited government, lower taxes, less spending, accountability, that sort of personal individualism, that sort of thing. If you run as a Democrat, or if you're a voting Democrat or a registered Democrat, then you mostly believe in the fact that you like bigger government, and you like socialism, and you like the safety net, and you like higher taxes, and you like hating people because they're rich or a different skin color or whatever else. I mean, that's the Democratic platform. Try and argue with me on that one, but it's the truth of the matter. The reason that I plea, and I always say, and people disagree with me on this, and that's okay, but I always say party over person in the general election. I got taught that at a very young age. I taught that when actually I first got into radio, and my mentor that I had started off with in radio, Mike Rosen, at 850 KOA in Denver. I listened to him in high school. I was always a big fan. I had the honor of interning for him for 6 months when I got into radio my first time. And that was his big platform. He was a contributor to the Denver Post, to the Rocky Mountain News when that was going on at the time. And his whole argument was party trumps person. You may not like the person. That person may be an absolute jerk. That person may be the most horrible person that you don't like. I don't like his character. I don't like him. I don't like his personality. It just doesn't click. I don't like him. But guess what? Or her. But guess what? Whether you're a Republican or you're a Democrat, and that candidate that you do not like is a Republican or a Democrat, in that general election, you support them. Why? Because you have the loudest voice in a party that actually has a chance of winning. When you vote third party, you take votes away from the side that potentially is more in line with you, and you actually give an opportunity for the opposition, who you despise even more so than that person or that candidate or whatever, and allow them to have the opportunity. And special interests are the ones that control the party. And again, is it right? No, it's not right in any way, shape, or form. But that's the reality of the situation. And until that's fixed, which I don't know if we'll ever be able to get special interest money out of politics, it ain't going to happen. And until we get rid of the two-party system, which I don't think is ever going to happen, as soon as one party may collapse and another one will rise, just like the Whig Party, they collapsed, Republicans rose, but it was still a two-party system. It was a two-party system there. They warned about it as the Founding Fathers. We still have it. There were a lot of things they warned about that we have today that we probably shouldn't, but that's another conversation for another day. But the fact that special interests run the party, or at least run the candidates in parties, you know that for the most part, they're going to fall in line with the values of that party. When the NRA backs a Republican candidate, then for the most part, that Republican will be supporting the NRA's agenda and be supporting pro-Second Amendment ideals because the NRA funded their campaign or helped fund their campaign. There's nothing wrong with that. And I know that gets a negative connotation for a lot of issues, but there's nothing wrong with that. When the NRA says we want to help contribute to your campaign, it's because that individual supports the Second Amendment. That's the fact of the matter. When Earth First, or when the Green Party, or when some environmental group comes out and says we're going to support the Democrat and we're going to get you elected, then when an environmental issue comes up like cap and trade, or when it comes to taxes on corporations, or when it comes to capping what they're allowed to do manufacturing-wise, or when it comes to what kind of water you're allowed to drink, or when it comes to how your car is going to be run with the filters on it, or when it comes to some kind of tax that you have to have because you're putting flatulence into the air, then they're going to vote for that policy because they've been funded by environmentalisms. That's the way it is. That's the way it goes. And I know people don't like that, but that's the way politics is run. That's the realism of the situation. And when it comes down to it, if you're a libertarian, for example, and you vote libertarian, do you think that they're really going to have an opportunity to win? Do you really think that out of the 300,000 people that went and voted for the primaries between Kris Kobach and Jeff Colyer just a couple of days ago, and over the last couple of weeks, do you really think those 300,000+ people are all of a sudden going to say, nope, I'm done, I've had it, I'm going to vote third party and vote for an independent, or I'm going to vote for a libertarian? Do you really think you're going to get that? No, you're going to get 5-6% of the votes. Now let's go to the general election and fast forward a little bit. It's a close race. Let's say we have Kris Kobach. Let's say we have Laura Kelly. We go into the general election. It's a tight race. Both of them are a little bit brass. Both of them kind of turn some people off. Both of them some people may think that either one of them may be a little bit extreme on those ends, maybe a little bit on that fringe one way or another. You know what? I'm going to vote third party there. It's a close race. It's within 3 or 4 points because of the fact that they are. Some people really like, you either love them or you hate them within the Republican Party, within the Democrat Party. You either really love them or you really hate them. You know what? I'm going to vote third party. I don't like either one of those people. You vote third party, they get 3% of the vote. As a libertarian, are you more in line with the liberal progressive socialists who's supported by Kathleen Sebelius, who's supported by the Bernie Sanders movement, trying to create socialism to infiltrate the state and make the state purple, who's going to support higher tax rates on gas, who's going to support higher tax rates on property, who's going to support higher income tax rates, who's going to support higher sales tax rates? Do you more fall more in line with that individual like Laura Kelly, or do you more fall in line with someone like Kris Kobach, who maybe you don't like his immigration stance? Maybe you don't like his voter ID laws. Maybe you think that he's not paid attention to the right issues. But he's voting for lower taxes, which libertarians believe in. You vote for limited government. He supports limited government, which libertarians believe in. Supports transparency and trying to get rid of the quote-unquote deep state or the corrupt politicians of the establishment, which libertarians believe in. Which one do you more fall in line with? But you know what? I really don't like him. I'm going to vote for the Libertarian. Libertarian gets 4% of the votes. It's a 3-point race. Guess who just won the race? Tell me how that makes sense to help promote your agenda when you just cost the election for someone that you more disagree with than the someone that you kind of disagree with. To me, that doesn't make any sense. Party over person. I'm always going to believe that. And you can either go off the cliff with the flag hanging high and say, I voted for my principles and I believe in that. And if we lost, then we lost with dignity. There's no losing with dignity in that sense. You lost, and now we have someone advocating for an agenda that is 180 from your position as opposed to 90 degrees from your position. Marginalism. That's the world of politics. I don't like it, but that's the reality of it. 316-721-8255. Let's get your thoughts on this. Phones are lighting up. Probably people very angry with me, but let's get your thoughts on all that and more. Again, I ask you, will you support the Republican candidate regardless of Kris Kobach, regardless of Jeff Colyer? Will you support the Republican in order to keep the Democrat out? It's the worst, the lesser of two evils. That's the way politics is. That's always been the case. It's never going to change that way. Even if we ended up having 5 different parties that are major parties, we'll always have a lesser of two evils argument. Will you support the Republican? Let's go to the phones, get your thoughts on this. Line number 1, good morning. What's your name?
Good morning, Andy. It's Nick, double dipping.
And Nick, what's happening?
Well, hey, I am actually glad that I do not live in the 2nd District. But I still, I guess, would have to say that voting for Steve Watkins would be like John Whitmer voting for J.C. Moore. But I think that we're going to have to go ahead and bite those bullets at some point in time because we are not libertarian. Mm-hmm. We are no to killing babies, no to hard drugs, no to identity politics, and no to breaking up the family.
Sure. No, you're right. I mean, and those are Republican values, and it's again, I was glad I wasn't in that 2nd congressional district race in the primaries. It's going to be a really interesting one when it comes to the general election because the 2 candidates are very interesting on each one of them.
Very interesting. If that's the word you want to choose, then God bless you, Andy Hoosier.
Well, that's at least what we try. Nick, I love it. No, you're right. I appreciate that very much. Let's go back to the phones here. Line number 2. Good morning. What's your name? Hello. Going once. Going twice. All right, give me a call back. We want to hear from you. 316-721-8255. There was that plea yesterday from Kris Kobach when it came to uniting under the Republican umbrella and moving forward together.
I want to say unequivocally that we will be a unified party as we move forward. And if I do hand the baton to Jeff, I will hand that baton to him with as much momentum as we possibly can, and I will cheer him on as he runs the rest of the race. But we have to begin running right now, because our opponents have already started running.
They've already started campaigning, and he's right. Both candidates still campaigning, still working together to try and move forward with the Republican umbrella, with the Republican baton, and whether Kris hands it off to Jeff or Jeff hands it off to Kris, either way, as a Republican, even as a conservative unaffiliated voter, we need to unite, we need to work together, and we need to advance conservatism to beat the Democrats. And even libertarians, I plead to you, come back. Help us clean the party up with the issues that you feel there are issues within the Republican Party, and let's unite together to make it happen. 316-721-8255. Let's go to the phones again. Line number 3. Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning. This is Sean.
Good morning, Sean. How are you, sir?
Oh, doing well. Hey, Libertarian, I just could never vote for them. They are for too many things that I'm against, way more than either the 2 candidates that I may not have voted for on the Republican ticket. Mm-hmm. So, you got to look at the totality. Don't vote. I would say don't vote for Libertarian simply because you don't like the Republican.
Right.
You got to look at them and say, which one do I least dislike?
Right.
Because there's every candidate out there I've got a problem with.
Sure. You're never going to agree with anyone 100%.
Absolutely not, and we better not. Or we're not going to be able to keep our candidates and our elected officials honest.
Right.
Is if we just sit there and blindly follow and say that ballot their altar, then that's not a good thing either.
Sure.
So yeah, it's healthy to have a disagreement and go forward. But one thing you touched on was special interests earlier, and it's kind of changed the subject a little bit. But I really dislike that term when it's used, in a negative fashion, mm-hmm. because anytime you pick up the phone and you meet with the candidate, you just became a special interest.
Exactly.
You personally just became a special interest. As far as giving money, well, when I give money to a candidate, I just became a special interest.
Right.
I expect that the candidate that I gave money to is going to either do something as far as voting for a certain issue for me, or will follow through on the things that I agree with you on, and that when you actually go to vote for a bill, that you will vote for it in the way that you campaign. That is called politicking and being a special interest, and
you're right. It's a special interest.
You are addressing your legislators.
That's what we are. We all are a special interest. Look, even when we have callers call into the show and we're talking about an issue and they come at it from, when we talk about education, and they say, oh, Andy, you're a nut because we need more money in education. All right, your special interest, your pet project is Education, that's where you're coming from. Maybe you're an administrator, maybe you're in the system, whatever the case is. You are a special interest. You're exactly right. When you give money to a candidate, when you knock on doors for them, when you actually do phone banks for them, when you support them and put a yard sign out in your yard supporting that candidate, you are a special interest to that candidate because you want them to fall in line and actually support the ideals that you support, which is why you're supporting them. And it doesn't matter whether you're an individual that gives $20 or whether you're a corporation that gives $5,000. That you want your interest, done, and that's why you're supporting them, because you want a better condition for your family or for your life or for your business, and that's why you want that individual to get into office.
I absolutely agree 100% with that. And as far as the money goes, if a corporation wants to get $5,000 for it, that's fine. The only group that I disagree should be able to contribute money to an organization directly are groups that take money by fiat. Okay?
Sure.
You're a member of my union, your dues will go towards special interest of my candidate.
Exactly.
And that's wrong. That's wrong. Now, if they want to have another checkbox on the side of their little application, okay, that says, I know that my $20 or $90 a month of dues that I pay into this is going to go towards collective bargaining. And I agree with your political stances. Here's another $20 that I'll give you. And then use that money to go be a special interest.
Then all the power to you.
And exactly. But my money, as far as what I give, if I disagree with your political views of your group, but I have to belong to your club in order to have this job, then, no, you can't use my money to politic with.
Sure. No, you're absolutely right. Sean, I hate to cut you off. We got to take a break here, but you are absolutely right. I mean, when you're forced to do it, unionism, again, I'm no fan of the unions. I know you're not either, but unionism, when you say, yeah, you know what, you're going to pay your dues. And oh, by the way, you may be a Republican, but the union dues are going to support the Democratic candidate in races. So your money, really, your hardworking money that you earned and gave to the union, they're funding somebody else that's against your ideals. That's a problem right there. Again, collective bargaining is a really, really dumb, bad idea. Got to take a break, 25 minutes past the hour. We'll get your thoughts and calls more when we come back. With some more calls on the line. Stay here. This is The Voice of Reason.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
Bottom of the hour news coming up. We got a lot of calls on the line. Stay there. We'll get to you. Get your phone calls. Get your take on all this. I know it's kind of a hot issue to discuss about uniting Republicanism as opposed to saying, I don't want to do it. Plus, when we come back, Steve Watkins, Republican candidate for the 2nd Congressional District. He'll be joining us. Looking forward to chatting with him. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM. Stay here.
Taking talk radio to the next level. The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Doing the thing, making it happen today on a Thursday. The pre-Friday celebration rolls right along. Welcome into it. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. 36 minutes past the hour. I wasn't going to comment on this. I wasn't going to do it. But, it's commented on the Facebook Live feed, so I guess I can't address it. Thank you for the kind words. If you heard at the top of the hour news broadcast at 7 o'clock, our newsman, Mr. Rick Everett, did the announcement on the Kansas Association of Broadcasters Awards, and we ended up doing very well as a company, as both of our stations. And yours truly, The Voice of Reason, ended up winning first place for the Public Affairs program. Now, this is the third year. Again, I mentioned earlier in the show that as of Saturday last week, I've been here at KQAM for 3 years, which is really cool. Really been excited to be here for as long. And for all 3 years, the last 2 years, I've come in second, which it doesn't matter. But I always laughed at what beat me because it was always NPR that got me. NPR always beat me every single year. But this year, really excited about it is that we ended up winning first place Public Affairs Program category for the show, for the Voice of Reason here on KQAM. I appreciate that very much. It's a great honor. Thank you very much for all the support. And for all the listeners, I mean, we've grown so much as a show, as a station. We've grown so much that it is really cool to be doing what we're doing and to be able to have the to be the catalyst to get you energized, to get you fired up, to get you pumped up for the show and what we're doing and for the message that we're trying to fight for in the conservatism of what we're trying to advocate for in the state of Kansas. We are doing good things. We are impacting the state. We're having an effect on it. And because of that, it's all because of you. I'm just the one relaying the message, but it's because of you, the listener and the constituent and the voter. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for the KAB award in the first place on that one. It really means a lot. And you can see behind me, if you're watching the Facebook Live or watching the TV, that we have some of the awards up there. When we get that, I think in October, when we officially get it, we'll have that one hanging up there, and appreciate that very much. So this portion of the Voice Reason brought to you by Riverside Cafe, 2 locations in Wichita, 1 in Derby, 9125 West Central Avenue, 739 West 13th Street, and 824 North Baltimore Avenue in Derby. As usual, on a Thursday, we have your complimentary burger and fries. We'll give away by the end of the segment. Stay tuned in for that. And appreciate their support very much here on KQAM as well with Riverside Cafe. Really excited on the phone with us, second congressional candidate after a hard-fought race. 7 candidates in the Republican primary for that district as Lynn Jenkins stepping down. It's kind of a big deal for us to maintain and keep that to be a Republican seat and advocate for Republican values. And the Republican candidate coming victorious on Tuesday night after the primary, Mr. Steve Watkins, is back with us here. Steve, congratulations, my friend. How are you?
Congratulations to you, Andy. My gosh, first place in the public affairs program, man. We all love the voice of reason here in the Kansas Second. So congratulations to you and KQAM.
Hey, I appreciate that very much. Thank you. It's been a fun ride for the last 3 years, and we'll keep it on going. So with the election earlier this week, I mean, you guys, it was a hard-fought race. You guys were able to pull that one off. A lot of great contenders out there with 7 different candidates, and congratulations to you guys.
Thank you. It was a hard-fought race, and the contenders were outstanding. And I just want to send my thanks and gratitude to them. We have been in this race for a long time, many, many months on the campaign trail, side by side, going through debates and fairs and parades and such. So I've got a lot of respect for them. And now is the time for unity and to bring people together. Our Republican tent is big, Andy, and we need to bring traditional and establishment Republicans, Trump Republicans, Christian conservatives, all under the same tent. And if we're going to beat Paul Davis in November.
Mm-hmm. That's going to be the big one. I know Paul Davis, really didn't have a contention in the primary, so he's been racking up and gearing up for the general. So it's going to be kind of a quick turnaround for you guys, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Now, Paul's been able to run towards the general from the get-go, and he's got good name recognition. As you may remember, he ran for governor, did real well in the 2nd District as governor, beat Brown back by 6 points. But here in the 2nd, we are Republicans, by and large. We are R plus 11, R plus 12. So we just, right now, the name of the game is to unify after what was a very hard-fought and in some cases, contentious primary. So we're right now meeting with Republican grassroots leaders throughout the district and unifying so that we can come together to beat Paul Davis.
Sure, absolutely. It was the 7 different districts, or the 7 different candidates that were running in there. I mean, some of them elected state officials, some of them kind of being outsiders as well. The military, I know you got the military background. We always called you the adventurer because of all the fun stuff that you've done there. And the challenge never is an obstacle from your sense, which is going to be good going into that. But what was the feel? I mean, were you guys feeling confident going into the primary on Tuesday? I know you guys had worked really hard, but with that open and that wide of a field, what was the feel going into the last week or two?
I think it's the idea that anything could happen, and I'm a data nerd. I went to MIT and to Harvard. I love some data. We didn't have a whole lot, but what we did, we would kind of overthink about and analyze. But I think at the end of the day, going into the election day itself, there's a lot of factors. It's hard to predict. We had a confidence that me and my crew had done everything that we could. That therein was our solace and our confidence. I had just the best team in the business, man. We were knocking on about 1,000 doors a day, and just to listen to what the voters were interested in, and they wanted a outsider to drain the swamp, and that was me. I was the only outsider in the race. I'd never held office before. I'd never even run for office before. And so that resonated well with voters on voting day.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to ask. I mean, on the streets in that district, I didn't know if it was any different than the district down here, but what were the main issues that people were concerned about when you were knocking on the doors? Was it the outsider? Was it taxes? Is it guns? Is it social issues? What were the big main factors when you knocked on the doors and they said, hey, this is the issue that's really important to me?
The biggest theme was that they wanted an outsider to drain the swamp. And that played well to me as a candidate in my candidacy. Now, the top issues we'd hear were end illegal immigration, healthcare, and then jobs in the economy. And that played well to me as well. I've in a previous life, I was in Iraq and Afghanistan helping to revitalize the economy there. I've created more jobs than all of my other opponents combined. I also, as a paratrooper and an Army Ranger with 10 years of military experience, I knew a thing or two about keeping boundaries and borders safe. I was a combat engineer who had designed to help build and oversee walls and immigration. That's part of my belief and part of my immigration solution. And as healthcare, well, I was surrounded by healthcare pros. My dad's a doctor. My wife is a doctor. She's a surgeon. And so healthcare is something that's very personal to us as a family and to our country and to the voters.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Talk about some of the, your platform again. I know we have a lot of listeners in the 2nd Congressional District, and as you mentioned, with healthcare and with the wall, immigration being a large factor of that. I know that obviously being a military member, and we saw you up at the Kansas State Rifle Association, you are very pro Second Amendment. But talk about some of those issues again of if you get up to, and hopefully when you get up to Washington D.C., what the main issues are that you want to focus on as a congressman.
Well, I'd like to focus on jobs, ending illegal immigration, and repealing health care. Those are my focal points, and I've got a lot of experience in those. I am also a very strong pro-life. There was, Andy, going into this, as a political outsider, I don't have a voting record upon which I can turn to and prove my republicanism. And so there's allegations of being a rhino. And let me assure your listeners and the voters in Kansas second that that's simply not the case. I've got strong conservative values, and I've got a litany of friends and associates throughout my life who have come out in the ether on social media to vouch for that. So I'd like to focus on jobs, immigration, and healthcare, and really because that's what the constituents are worried about, and that's as it turns out, those are the things that I've done a lot of in my career. So it's a good combination, and we are very, very confident going into the general.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you brought up the attacks that came down on you. I know that they were pretty vicious at some points, and I know that it may potentially come up in the general election as well. So for a lot of the constituents, a lot of the voters to clear that out, there was the criticism that you had met with Democrats prior to running as a Republican, and that your wife had worked for Planned Parenthood, and that you were pro-choice, and those kind of issues. From those attacks that came on you, what was your response to those, and what is the story? What's the rest of the story, as they would say?
Sure. Yes, well, when I came back, I graduated about a year or so ago from Harvard with a degree in politics, public policy, and so I came back and I met with all sorts of people. I met with a transportation lobbyist who turned out to be more of a liberal leader than what was explained to me. He set the meeting location as being a Democratic office. I didn't back down from that. I'd met with insurgents, and I'd met with warlords in Iraq and Afghanistan, so I wasn't intimidated by a liberal in a liberal office. And so I went into that meeting to learn about transportation policy, and they have completely mischaracterized the nature of me going there. I've heard just absolute fake news, bald-faced lies saying that I was going to run interested in running as a Democrat. That is absolutely fake news. I volunteered for Lynn Jenkins' campaign in 2016. I had just come from the NRCC, from the RNC in D.C. Literally had just driven from there. And so I was back in Topeka meeting with lobbyists, meeting with Republican leadership, just to learn, listen and learn. So so that meeting was completely mischaracterized. And as for another arrow that they like to sling at me is voting. I haven't voted much, and the reason for that is I've been over in conflict environments and highly tactical and highly dangerous places for most of my adult career, and that's what I've done for a living. That's my job, my livelihood, and I was good at my job, and I miss it. But one thing is my focus was on keeping my men and women alive, and I grew an organization from 4 people or 3 people to 470 people, operating in some of the most violent places in the world. And so, could it have been possible for me to vote during that time? Yeah, possibly. I could track down an APO here and there, but it wasn't my focus. My focus was the safety and livelihood of my people, and also keeping my company solvent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I heard some of those attacks. I wasn't too necessarily concerned about the voting record on that sense. I mean, as you mentioned, I mean, if you're active, people have things going on, and especially something like that is kind of important for sure. What about the Planned Parenthood attack that your wife had worked for him? That a video came out saying that you were a pro-choice Christian. If you got into Congress and an issue came up about the idea of defunding Planned Parenthood because of a pro-life mentality or the abortion issue, what would be your stance on that issue?
Absolutely, unequivocally pro-life. Now, the pro-choice Christian quote was a gaffe, and my opponents knew that, yet played it anyway. That's an attempt to deceive, Andy. That's not true. They had heard me say pro-life 1,000 times, and I had a gaffe one day. Not everybody's as good as Andy, the great Andy Hoosier, the #1 public affairs program voice of reason. Now, sometimes, especially as political outsiders, we get our words wixed, and it came out pro-choice. And in fact, that was a gaffe. It was caught on record. They played it over and over again. Now, I talked with one of my opponents who sent it out there and actually boosted it with some money, Dennis Pyle. Dennis and I spoke on the phone last night. He congratulated me on the victory. He said he's taking he said, Steve, I want you to guarantee me that you're pro-life and that you always will be. I said, Dennis, absolutely. Yeah, I got my personal guarantee. He said, that works for me. I'm taking it down, and I'm going to put a note up there saying why we took it down is because Steve swore to me that he was pro-life, and that's good enough for me. So even my opponents, Dennis Pyle, who floated it out there and put money behind it to boost it, even he's coalescing around the truth, which is I'm pro-life. It was a gaffe, and enough on that.
Sure.
So, but as for my wife, now 14 years ago, my wife was working my wife is a surgeon. 14 years ago, she was working in a program comparable to Doctors Without Borders. She's working in Angola and Botswana doing work there. And so she saw she had a lot of patients who would stumble into her, surgical facilities, bleeding to death from botched abortions, back alley abortions. And so that went far in shaping her worldviews. And so this isn't a high-heeled, liberal elite in some ivory palace in New England, forming. I mean, this is a tough field surgeon whose view on the topic was forged in the mud and the blood of Africa. And but she is pro-life in the context of our marriage. She's pro-life in the context of our fellowship, but she doesn't believe that pro-life is particularly a universal policy that could save more lives necessarily. So that being said, she's not running for Congress. I am. She's never attempted to persuade me on the topic whatsoever, nor will she.
Sure.
She's proud of my views, my faith, and my politics. Yeah, so that's the long and short of. So then she volunteered for Planned Parenthood 14 years ago. She was exploring women's health. Now, this is also, I'd point out, a woman who's dedicated her life to women's health. She all her patients are women suffering from cancer. And so my wife this is obviously something that she's very impassioned about, and she's saved many, many women's lives in her career, and I'm proud of her for that.
Well, I'm glad that you're able to respond to some of the stuff, because I know it was floating out around there a lot. And as you mentioned, I mean, uniting behind Republicanism, getting you into office is the next step. You have our full support to get you in there to beat Paul Davis, because it is extremely important. Because as you mentioned, all these issues that you talked about, from job growth to the Second Amendment to building the wall to supporting Donald Trump to the pro-life issue, all of these issues Paul Davis will not support, and it is truly the diversity of Republicanism versus liberalism in this election. So I'm glad you're able to get these out there. Let's be able to unite as the Republicans. Let's get you into office, and good luck with that, my friend.
Thank you so much, Andy, and congratulations again to you, the Voice of Reason, and KQAM.
Hey, appreciate it very much. Steve Watkins, Republican candidate for the 2nd Congressional District. You got to stay in touch. We got to get you on the show. We got to help out with whatever we can, and once you're in there, we got to keep getting you on the show here regularly.
Thank you, brother. Absolutely. You know it.
Hey, there we are. 8 minutes to the top of the hour. Steve Watkins, candidate for Republican candidate for the 2nd Congressional District. We'll take a break, wrap up hour number 2. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
There it is, Steve Watkins, 2nd Congressional District Republican candidate for that one against Paul Davis. I know a lot of that stuff has been floating around, and some people are like, whoa, what the heck's going on? You know why we like to have him on the show often? Because we get to hold elected officials accountable. Congressman Ron Estes, Steve Watkins, if he gets in there. We try and get the candidates on the show, the elected officials on the show, to make sure that they understand their platform, they fight for their platform, and that we continue to hold them accountable for their platform. So appreciate him coming on the show very much so. The Republican candidate for that 2nd Congressional District, let's keep it red and keep it Republican, and let's advocate for that. This portion of The Voice of Reason brought to you by Riverside Cafe. I didn't do it in the last segment because we did go long in that interview, but it is time. Let's do caller number 2. Caller number 2 right now at 721-8255. 721-TALK. We'll get you your complimentary burger and fries, valid at any of the 3 locations of Riverside Cafe, 2 in Wichita, 1 in Derby. We'll get you right now. Call in. We'll get you your Riverside Cafe here on The Voice of Reason. This is your show. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. Hour number 3 of The Voice of Reason coming up in just a minute. Stay here.
It's time for Reason.
I mean, if he's a socialist, then being a civil rights attorney, being a lawyer, every bit of money that he brings in, he should probably donate. I mean, like all of it. He doesn't deserve any. He should be back to that level again, right? Because there are people that live at that level, and that's unfortunate for them. He should probably be living on food stamps because all the revenue and profits that he generates from his legal services, he should probably donate and give to somebody else.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Oh, the days just keep getting better and better. Welcome into The Voice of Reason, hour number 3. The Voice of Reason broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas. On the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. Simulcasting on TV as well, KGPT TV, channel 2610. Good morning. Welcome aboard. It's great to have you along today on a pre-Friday celebration. Yeah! We've had a heck of a week this week with Election Day on Tuesday. If you're still unaware and you're just tuning in, we still have not had the official calling of the Republican primary for governor yet. Kris Kobach and Jeff Colyer still neck and neck with 191 votes separating them, but yet we do still have provisional and mail-in ballots to count. We are less than a week away now, a week as of yesterday, for those to be counted and the official number to be set. But as of right now, Secretary of State Kris Kobach is in the lead by 191 votes. We'll keep you apprised of what's going on there. I want to shift gears from the politics, or from the election side at least, just for a little bit right now. We'll continue to cover it. We have some press conference audio from both Kris Kobach and Jeff Colyer. We'll play in just a little bit and get your thoughts and calls. We have some calls waiting on the line. Don't go anywhere. Stay here. But I want to shift it for just a bit, because as we talk about some of the political issues, we talk about ways to make the community better. We talk about being aware of certain issues in our communities to address them. You cannot address them if you just turn the other way, kind of turn a blind eye and forget all about it. You can't do it. So we address the issues the best way that we know how to, and there we can work towards correcting and fixing those issues. There was an investigation done by the Washington Post a while back on the national homicide rate and arrest data that's identified places in dozens of American cities where murder is common, but arrests are not nearly as common. The project first launched back in June with 50 states, but since has added 5 more to its database. And ladies and gentlemen, Wichita was included on one of those. Here's what it found in the city of Wichita. 418 homicides in the last 11 years. 39% of them went without arrests. Kind of an interesting number. Now, as you know, we have the city council member Brian Fry on the show every Tuesday talking about the city council meeting. But as we talk about this type of issue, he said we need more law enforcement. We're working with our budget, the new next year's budget for the city. We're hiring on 30 some odd more officers from investigation to on the streets to doing everything because we see this rate, we see this ticking, and we need to address it. So the city's aware of these types of issues, and we're working to address them. But on the phone to talk about this investigation and more, she's an investigative journalist with the Washington Post. We're excited to have on Kimbriell Kelly on the line with us. Kimbriell, how are you this morning?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you coming on the show very much. So talk to us a little bit, first off, about this investigation, not just in Wichita, but what you guys found overall when you did this study and found out what's happening with homicide rates.
Sure, and when we took a look at the 50 cities across the country, and granted we picked cities that were very large, but also that had a sizable amount of killings in it, we found that when you look at the arrest over the last, say, 10 years or so, that about half of those killings did not result in arrest. And I don't know about you, but those odds, seem pretty stark, essentially 1 in 2. And so we saw these trends all across the country. How that plays out, how it plays out in the Midwest is different than how it's playing out in the South and in the West Coast. And we also saw some racial disparities, which is a second report we came out with a couple of weeks ago, which found that of those cases that are unsolved, we had 26,000 of them, that 3/4 of those victims were African American. And so you see some disparate trends across the country in terms of who's impacted, but also how successful detectives have been in making arrests in the case in every community, across the country.
Sure. What are some of the higher cities that are higher up on the list that came out when you guys first started doing this?
Well, obviously, one of the big things that people talk about is Chicago.
Sure.
It's got, the lowest rate, and Austin actually had one of the higher rates. And, in Chicago, you're essentially talking about just 1/4 of those cases leading to an arrest. And, that's a pretty low number. But to the contrary, you have Austin, who, by and large, most of the cases lead to arrest, about 76%.
Why do you think it is? I mean, what's the reasoning why we're not seeing arrests when it comes to homicides? Is it just not the manpower and the law enforcement effect that they have on the community there? Is it the lack of resources? Is it just the fact that we don't know and that they're ongoing investigations? What's the main reasoning that you guys have been able to find?
There's a lot of reasons, and I feel like there's two different camps, at least two. One is the community and one is what the police say. So if you talk to people in the communities, they say, retaliation fear is like number one on their list. If we live in these communities and we may not be socially or financially mobile where, say you witness a crime or something's happening in your community, you can't necessarily leave and move somewhere else. There is also an issue of distrust. Some people distrust the police because of what they see happening across the country. And additionally, people say they live across the street from their killers or they're living in the neighborhoods. Of course, they can't come forward and cooperate with police because, they're afraid for their own safety and the safety of their families. But then you also have the police department who says that, their biggest issue, one of the biggest issues, is the lack of cooperation. They know that people in the community have information, but they're afraid to come forward. Some police chiefs also talk about implicit, or racial bias that may be ingrained within certain people in the police department. They say that's maybe not a widespread issue, but that's something to consider.
Are we seeing any type of trend in a positive or negative way when it comes to the relations of the officers in certain communities? When it comes to race relations, I know the Black Lives Matter movement really caused a division there for a while. Here in Wichita, we had a really getting together of the community. And I know that there were some picnics, and the law enforcement, the police office here in Wichita met with the Black Lives Matter movement. They had the picnic, kind of a dance party thing. They went along, and they've really tried to work on that. Are we seeing that type of activity in other cities, or is there still a lot of work to be done there?
Absolutely. I think both are said to be true. I think even when you have communities that may be active in terms of getting their police officers into their communities, getting them more familiar with residents, community policing, you still have a long way to go. I think a lot of police chiefs would still say that. There is still a fractured system, but police chiefs, they say that is something that is a priority for them, and they are trying to, get officers into the community more frequently. I have one police department that I talked to recently where most of their officers, their detectives could police, any region across the country, and they decided to separate that into smaller sections. So they basically split the detectives over various regions so that they can get more familiar with the people in that community and have a higher chance of success, solving those crimes.
Sure, absolutely. Has there been an investigation like this prior to that we can compare to? I mean, with the number of cities, these top 50 cities, to where, as you mentioned, I mean, the arrest rate's really, really low in some of these, only 25%, like Chicago, which is kind of a scary number. If we are seeing homicides and we're not actually getting punishment for that, that's an issue. But let's say a study from 10, 20, 15 years ago, is there any comparison that we can kind of track this a little bit?
Not that I can recall. And the interesting thing about it is, the FBI collects this data, but it's an aggregate. So if you look for, Wichita, you might see the overall rate. You wouldn't be able to see exactly where these problems are happening. And what's different from the data that we provide is that we actually show the pinpoint location of where these homicides occurred and whether there was an arrest in that particular case. And we also have more information about the victim, including their race.
We're talking with Kimbriell Kelly with the Washington Post. How much do you think the gun discussion has had into this? I know that, Chicago is one of the more stricter areas when it comes to gun control and not allowing to have any type of firearms, that sort of thing, as opposed to cities like Wichita, to where we have constitutional carry in the state. A lot of businesses do carry firearms on their sides. Is there any kind of correlation between gun laws in the area versus the homicide rates?
That's an interesting question. We actually didn't look into that, but maybe that's something we'll take up.
I'd be really interested to see kind of where that is, because we've actually seen a homicide rate increase here in Wichita a little bit, and some blame it on the gun, some blame it on the lack of law enforcement. I don't know if you heard it or not at the beginning, but we're working on trying to include more officers in the area because they do feel like they're short-staffed, and we're seeing the increase because of that. So that would be a really interesting side of that. What is the next step? Now that we're aware of the low arrest rates, what can we do to start being aware of this first off, and then starting to fix some of that to where justice can be done on some of these issues?
Well, I think there's a lot of different things that police departments are doing across the country. One of the things I've heard recently was down in Houston, they're planning on making some changes so that their homicide investigators are not just focused on investigating killings, but non-fatal shootings, because what you're hearing right now is that sometimes non-fatal shootings ended up becoming homicides. It may be somebody who got shot initially and somebody missed, and then weeks later they turn up dead. And so greater focus on non-fatal shootings might be something that you see coming forward in the future. And also something to keep in mind is this. When you have cases that don't result in an arrest, like you mentioned, like a Chicago, where 3 or 4 cases, there's no arrest, what ends up happening is those people continue to cause harm in the community and continue to do more killings in the future. And so that's something that's a big concern for police departments. Oh, sure.
If you're not getting in trouble for it, then why stop? Because you're going to get away with it until you don't get away with it, and then you can readjust and reevaluate once you get to that level. When it comes to the community level, and as you mentioned, some people are scared to call because they know that the murderers right next to them are living next door to them, but they're scared. I know that when people try and call and even make an anonymous call to law enforcement, the first thing the law enforcement does at that time is show up at their door to get their story face to face before they go on. When it comes to community involvement, are there ways that we can start working to make the community safer from our local level before we even try and get local law enforcement involved?
Yeah, and there are police departments that do want to do that, and they want to actually, they have rewards that they offer. There is actually a case out in the Midwest in which a teenager was actually killed in broad daylight, and there were several people who witnessed. It was at a birthday party, I believe, and they were not able to get a single witness to the case. And, the police department was like, this has got to end. And so essentially what ended up happening is they got some grant money, I believe, to put more effort into witness protection. And so it goes to exactly what you're saying is like, what are some solutions either within the community or either providing protection for people that can help address this issue so people do feel free to come forward?
Exactly. I think that's one of the major issues why some people are just like, yeah, I didn't say anything, and turn around and look the other way. And that's kind of a scary thought. Kimbriell Kelly, Washington Post, we really appreciate the information. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'd love to get you back on at a later time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. That's Kimbriell Kelly right there with the Washington Post. We'll take a break. We'll open up lines to you. It is open lines to you for the rest of the show today, right here on The Voice of Reason on KQAM.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
minutes past the hour. Welcome back into The Voice Reason, doing the thing, advancing conservatism on a daily basis and growing every single day. Your one and only local conservative show in the entire Mid-America region. Making it happen. Welcome in 316-721-8255. Thanks again to Kimbriell Kelly from the Washington Post talking about the rates in Wichita when it comes to homicide and the percentage of them actually being arrested. A lot of factors lead into that. Here's one that I can tell you that I think would decrease that. I'm curious to see what their stats are, and I asked her about the gun side of it, and they didn't do that part of it on gun regulation in those cities compared to the number of homicides. But I'm really curious to see how many of those weren't arrested because they were dead from people who defended themselves in that case. I don't know if that would be part of that investigation or not. I think we should do a study on that as well, because I think we need to increase the number of individuals that have firearms for self-defense and are not afraid to use it. But then you get into the whole emotional argument that, you know, the punishment was worse than the crime. Remember that the grandkids or the grandparent that was upset about the two kids that broke into a house was killed by an AR-15. Both of them were. And then now they're suing the home defender because the punishment was worse than the crime that they committed. Yet they were going in with brass knuckles to be able to beat to a pulp the elderly guy that lived there, and they were met with an AR-15. You know, whatever. 6 and 1, half dozen on the other, right? Good golly. 316-721-8255. It is open lines to you for the last little bit of the show. Let's go to them at line number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
Hello, Andy. This is Helen.
Good morning, Helen. How are you?
I'm doing just great. I have 2 issues that I want to discuss.
Okay.
Okay. The first one being the people against controversial candidates.
Yes.
And the other one is being our censoring of conservatives on the internet.
Yes.
Okay, so the first one is that these people that are all upset about controversial Kris Kobach, well, they would really be upset with the Lord Jesus Christ because he was really controversial.
He was a bit of a controversial character back in the day. He was.
And so controversial that they murdered him on a cross. So they wouldn't be able to handle that, would they?
That is true.
And then also the censoring of conservatives on Republicans, you know, on the internet and stuff. The internet is a public utility. So can you imagine a public utility saying, well, you're a conservative and you can't use our electricity, you can't use our water, you can't...
Oh, sure. Well, see, and here's the thing. I don't see the internet as a public utility. I don't think that it should be regulated by the government as a public utility. I like the fact that it is a private industry and that it is broadband providers like AT&T or Cox or whoever you're with that are out there that are trying to get you to sign up, that are doing their things, because that's why the internet is so efficient. If it was truly all the broadband was controlled by the government, then I think we would have a lot more issues with the internet than we actually do today. But what I agree with you on is the fact that when it comes to conservatives being censored, some say that because it's a free market option and that it's a social media platform like Facebook that's privately owned, they have the right to censor people. But it goes a lot deeper than that. Other than the violation of the First Amendment, to where people should have the right to freedom of speech, they should make it very well known that they don't want people with certain idealisms to actually be part of their platform. Instead of saying, this is the media platform for everybody, this is the way for the world to connect, and we want the world to connect regardless of who you are, regardless of orientation, regardless of gender, regardless of race, regardless of ideas. All of you can come together and you can have a conversation, because that's what this platform's about. And if you're going to do that, then do that without the censoring of other people. I'm glad you brought that up, because I want to talk about that a little bit today. When we come back, we'll do that after the bottom of the hour. We got some other calls on the line as well. Stay here. Bottom of the hour news coming up. This is The Voice of Reason.
Fastest growing radio show in Kansas.
What? How's he do that?
That's what I'm talking about.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Oh, yeah, doing the thing. Welcome into The Voice of Reason, making it happen. Starting your morning off the right way. Interpret that however you'd like to do so. 316-721-8255. 312-721-TALK if you want to join into the program. We've covered a lot of ground today. Kris Kobach at his press conference yesterday.
One of our opponents is a liberal state senator who is in many respects much like Kathleen Sebelius all over again. Pro-abortion, pro-tax hike, a big government Democrat. Our other opponent is a liberal businessman who is so liberal that the U.S. Senate pressured the Senate Democratic candidate to drop out of the race in 2014, you may remember, so that he could run as the de facto Democrat. He was supported by Senator Joe Biden, by Senator Claire McCaskill, and by a large number of Senate Democrats in the United States Senate. He was also supported by Michael Bloomberg. We know, and the people of Kansas know, that a return to a left-wing governor will not be good for our state. It will not be good for businesses. It will not reflect the values of the people of Kansas. And our lagging business environment would get even worse.
There it is, Kris Kobach talking about uniting with the Republican Party, regardless of whatever candidate they may be, next week after the provisional and mail-in ballots are official. And we have our candidates, and understanding that the other two options are left-wing progressives. I mean, Greg Orman being an independent candidate, but predominantly being embraced by Democrats in prior elections. Laura Kelly being an extreme far-left Democrat, embraced by Kathleen Sebelius and some of the liberals in Kansas. And regardless of whether it may be Kris Kobach or Jeff Colyer, we unite behind the Republican Party. It's kind of like the whole Donald Trump thing, to where you may not like Donald Trump. He's a little brass. He's a little, the bull in the china shop thing, and you may not like him. But do you really want Hillary? And if you support Hillary over Donald Trump, if you supported Gary Johnson, the libertarian, over Donald Trump, then, then you're okay with someone worse off representing you, fighting for those values. So the question I have for you is, will you support either candidate, Jeff Colyer or Kris Kobach, depending on whoever gets that nomination going in to the general election? 316-721-8255. Let's go to the phones. Open lines to you for the last little bit of the program. Line number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, morning, Andy. It's
Sean.
The original one and only Sean here.
That's right.
Not to be confused with any other Sean.
That's right. The Sean himself. What's happening, sir?
I'm just sitting here enjoying my morning Joe.
There you
go. Not to be confused with Joe Scarborough, because he's a schmuck.
No, well, there you go. See?
And thirdly, I'd like to congratulate myself for your winning first place in competition. I believe.
See, I'm sure that you contributed to that. I'm pretty sure you did.
I believe I'm supposed to get a check.
That's right. That's right. Check's in the mail. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, okay. I know why you picked this topic today for a discussion, and believe me, it gets me a little bit. It ruffles my feathers, because yesterday you had a guy that called. And fortunately, he called after I called, and not before, because, man, I would have went off yesterday on the phone.
You mean for the unity of the party and supporting or not supporting Kris Kobach?
Well, yeah. See, and I'm glad Kobach is at least in the lead. He's the guy I want for governor. But if he winds up losing this primary after all of the votes are counted, well, obviously, of course, I'm going to vote for the incumbent.
Sure.
Because I don't want a Democrat in there.
Sure.
Okay. And let me tell you something. Let me ask you. Let me counter question you.
Okay.
Okay. I got old school values, because I'm an old school guy. I was born. I'm 53 years old. All right. And I'm for marriage between a man and a woman, and that's it. I'm for high moral values and ethical values, and patriotism and God and country and all of that. I'm anti-abortion, and opposed to all kinds of bad things, slavery and whatnot. The point is that makes me controversial.
Yes.
Okay? Because these days, the good guys are being made out to be the bad guys, while the bad guys get made out to be the good guys. So let me ask you, Andy, knowing that I'm a Reagan conservative and a patriot, and, I'm retired from the military, a combat veteran, and That would make me a baby killer, by the way, serving in Iraq.
Probably.
I'm pro-life, and I'm all for securing the border. And would you vote for a guy like me? Because that sounds pretty controversial today.
That is pretty controversial, and I don't know. You may be on the fringe there a little bit. You probably don't represent the majority of traditional Americanism today, so I don't know if I could support something like that. This is where we're at today, and this is, the Republican Party. As much as the wide umbrella that we have under the Republican Party, which is nice. I like the diverse opinions. I like the debate. I like the discussion and the dialogue within the party. But at the end of the day, the Republican Party is the party that represents traditional America, just as you mentioned, supporting enforcement of our laws and the rule of law when it comes to our borders, whether it comes to criminals or whatever it may be. When we talk about enforcing the right to life and actually life issues and private property and personal individualism and that sort of thing, that we don't support slavery because we don't believe that human individuals should actually be property to somebody else, including, by the way, that meaning that human beings should not be the property of the government under social programs wanting to take care of you by a safety net and that sort of thing. We are not property. We are not lorded over. We are not the peasants. We're not the ones that are controlled by dictators or bureaucrats. We are individuals, and that's what republicanism represents. Now, we can have different flavors of that on how we go about that, but when we have Republicans that support not those things, then we have to call them out. But as a Republican Party, we have to stay united. We have to stay together. And just because we may not like the character of somebody doesn't mean that we should want the opposition for the extremists to come in and abuse what rights that we want to have just because we don't like the person.
Well, I'll tell you what, Andy, the guy yesterday, the alleged Republican, who said he would rather vote for the Democrat bimbo candidate over Kris Kobach, because Kobach's Republican and he's tired of controversial Republicans. I would just as soon that guy not vote at all. Better yet, move to California, because there's nothing out there but Democrats. It's a one-party state, so there's nothing controversial about them. You got two choices, a Democrat and a Democrat to vote for. It's just a matter of which one is the better liar or which one is less crooked, I guess.
Well, that's a great point. Sean, I appreciate it very much, my friend. I want to get to another phone call here, but you're right. And that's why, again, as I mentioned this in the last hour, and it is somewhat controversial that, it's party trumps the person. And a lot of people don't have that pledge to the party, and it's not necessarily about the pledge to the party. It's about having the loudest voice that we can with people that are like-minded, which is why we openly register as a certain party and we support a certain party. Now, again, in the state of Kansas, we do have 31% of the registered voters that are unaffiliated because they don't want to be tied to a party, and they can go about choosing the best candidates. And that's all great and hunky-dory. But we got to remember, again, number one, that we do live in a two-party system. And number two, there are special interests. And I think special interests to a degree are a good thing when it comes to elections. As a Republican, you're getting money funded to you by individuals that have companies that want business opportunities and an environment for businesses to succeed. We have groups like the NRA that want you and like you and support you because you support the Second Amendment and gun rights. We have like Kansans for Life and other pro-life organizations that support you because you believe in private property and you believe in human life and you believe in those things. And when you see those types of special interests come in, then you know that when you go into the elected seat, then predominantly, even if you think that person is a terrible human being, that mostly, for the most part, predominantly, they're going to lean towards voting in favor of those issues because of who's supporting them and the fact that they're under that Republican Party. And again, I know that Kris Kobach is a very controversial individual. Some people absolutely hate him based on his immigration stance. Some people think that he's completely taken or focused on wrong issues as the Secretary of State and done things that he doesn't necessarily need to be doing, and that he's working with President Trump too much, or that he's on national media too much, or whatever the case is. That people despise him for being so controversial. If he ends up getting the nomination at the end of the day, then it's our duty to embrace him as the Republican candidate, because all of those flaws that you may think that he has, are minimal compared to someone like a Laura Kelly who supports Bernie Sanders, who wants higher taxes, who wants to raise your sales tax or income tax or property tax, who wants to raise more spending and get us farther into debt as a state, who wants to expand Medicaid programs that are failed social programs, that wants to work closer with the government to bring more federal money in to tie us to federal grants and federal money to tie us to federal regulation. They want to start repealing your Second Amendment. Are all of those issues more important than, or less important, I guess you should say, less important as someone who doesn't like maybe Kris Kobach or Jeff Colyer, whichever one it may be? Are those issues less important to you than the fact that you just don't like the candidate? I'm going to vote third party. Okay, tell me when the third party's ever actually won an election. Tell me when the third party's actually going to do something productive. It's not going to happen. Greg Orman is a nice guy. We've had him on the show. We'll continue to get him on the show. But independents do not win races. Libertarians do not win races. I give them 5%, maybe 10%. It's not going to happen. And if it is a close race and it's within 2 or 3 points between either Jeff Colyer and Laura Kelly or Kris Kobach and Laura Kelly, and it's a 3 or 4 point margin, and the independent ends up getting 5% and the libertarian ends up getting 2%, then those people that voted for them ideologically, you just threw the election one way or another. And the person that you were closely more in line with just lost because you'd rather have the worst extreme. Again, I don't like the fact that we have a two-party system. The reality is that we do. We always have had. The Founding Fathers warned us about that. They didn't want that. It's not the good system to have, but we have it right now. And instead of trying to walk away from it, it's our duty to fix it from within. That's what we have to do. So will you support either candidate, Kris Kobach or Jeff Colyer, regardless of the candidate, to go in and beat the Democrat? Will you do that? Will we unite? And again, I know it's kind of a falling on deaf ears to some degree, but the plea that I have against libertarians, and I plead them to come back to the Republican Party and help us fix the party from within. I get your beef with them. I get the Republicans threw you out. I get that Ron Paul was run out of the party. I understand it, and I get it. It shouldn't have happened. There are bad people in the Republican Party. There are establishment, wishy-washy members of the Republican Party that are leaders of the Republican Party at the federal level that run out anybody that stays strong on ideology. Guess what? Conservatives were almost run out of the Republican Party until Donald Trump came along. Conservatism was almost dead in the Republican Party. Yes, we had Ted Cruz. Yes, we had Mike Lee. Yes, we had Rand Paul. Yes, we had some, but they were being run out. They were being silenced. They were being cornered. Anybody that stands on principle were being run out at the federal level, and we cannot allow that. Now we have an opportunity to actually do something great. Now we have an opportunity to actually do something productive in the party because of Donald Trump, and conservatism has a louder voice in the party than ever before. Now it's time for the libertarians, along with the conservatives, to come back into the party, to fix and clean up the party from within, and be able to fight for our values within that party. 316-721-8255, line number 3. Let's go to it here. Good morning. What's your name?
Scott.
Scott, what's going on, sir?
Well, anytime somebody get information from the Washington Post or New York Times, I know that these people are like New World Order type people, social engineer type people, and I don't trust really much of anything that those people say. But now when they're talking about communities that, first of all, they don't even live in any of those communities or even talk to the people when they study them. The only thing they're really trying to study is how the hell did those people survive all the government, the gulag that they're trying to put on people. I mean, government's not trying to help anybody. They're trying to hinder people.
Sure.
And in the case of the police, I mean, a police state has never, ever, anywhere in the world produced any economic growth. So if you put more police in a place that has low economic growth, it's just going to kill it even more. So, I mean, I don't see how police are the answer to anything when you have a situation where you have gentrification, where you have no investment in an area. It's just like having a flower. So, well, we're not going to give it any sunshine or water, but somehow it might live.
Sure. No, I agree. I mean, I am not in support of a police state in any way, shape, or form. And you're right. Government does not fix issues. That actually causes issues. And a police state itself would actually be detrimental to many societies. When we see higher crime rates, you're absolutely right. There's a deeper issue in certain communities and certain areas on why there's a lot of crime.
Well, let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. See, in Chicago, for example, they had a lot of black leadership that the establishment didn't like. And so they did everything they could to destroy and kill off those people. And those were the people where the masses listened to. They would listen to them. When you had a Fred Hampton and Mark Clark, they would listen to those guys. But they weren't establishment guys. So the people downtown say, hey, we got to get rid of those guys. You know, we bring COINTEL and FBI to get rid of them because they're not working for us or doing what we tell them to do. They're helping the community too much, so we don't want those guys around. So anybody who the community listens to, they don't want them in there, and so that's why you got chaos in places like Chicago. Mm-hmm. The leadership they had, they destroyed it. That people would listen to, they destroyed it.
Well, leadership in Chicago
everywhere else you go, they do that.
Yeah, well, leadership in Chicago has been bad for a really long time. I mean, just look at Rod Blagojevich and Rahm Emanuel and some of the leaders in Chicago that have actually ruined that place. Scott, I appreciate it. I want to sneak in one more phone call before a break here. But you're right. I mean, we need to invest in the communities to make sure communities are taken care of. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't have any law enforcement, because there are still some that need to actually enforce the rule of law and be there for the community in that sense. But you're right. I mean, I'm not for a police state in any way, shape, or form. And I don't think a police state's ever going to fix anything. But we do need law enforcement in a community. Because as you can see right now, I mean, the communities, even when there is crime and homicide and things going on, that people don't hold those community members accountable for those actions by turning them in, by doing something about it, and they just kind of turn the other cheek and let it happen. So it's got to be that happy balance and that happy medium in a conversation like that. We got about a minute and a half left, but I want to sneak in one more phone call before we take a break. Line number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, Andy. This is Helen again.
Hey, Helen, you got about a minute. Go for it.
Okay. Well, to clarify about the censoring on the Internet, and then the Internet is a public utility. The Google didn't build the Internet. YouTube didn't build the Internet. Twitter didn't build the Internet. It is all built by taxpayer dollars, both Democrats and Republicans. Our taxpayer dollars have paid for the building of the Internet. So that's why it's a public utility, and that's why the conservatives should not be censored from anything. We should have equal opportunity as the Democrats do.
Well, you're right. I mean, we should have equal opportunity on there, because the Internet itself is supposed to be a kind of a free, wild, wild west range to where anybody can have any kind of message on there in any way, shape, or form, and that's not happening. And now, I mean, social media itself should, I mean, apparently they have the right to be able to censor whatever they want to on their own platform. The problem is, though, is that because of those quote-unquote big tech companies getting into a little bit deeper, they control the domains, they control the flow of traffic on the Internet, so therefore, even when other alternative sources try to come up to compete with them, they silence them and they don't allow it. They really do have, as a monopoly, as social media platforms and as Google and others that actually control 80% of Internet flow, they are the monopoly of the web. And they silence anybody else trying to compete with them, even when we try alternative sources. That's the issue I have with it. But didn't you hear? Come on, Al Gore's the one that started the Internet. Ha! Al Gore created the Internet. Didn't you know that? Got to take a break. 6 minutes to the top of the hour.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Wrapping up the program today on the Voice of Reason. What do you say? 721-8255, 721-TALK. If you're going to join into the program, we got just about a minute left. Well, I guess not even that. We're running out of time. Always fun. Always appreciate all the phone calls, conversations. Love it. Tomorrow, I do actually want to spend some time on the whole censorship thing. Have not had a chance to talk about that. I know everybody else has been talking about it. Alex Jones and InfoWars being banned from all social media, and kind of a crazy thing, kind of a crazy discussion to have. So would we be censored? I mean, you see our Facebook Live gets banned half the time, too. It's kind of wild. It's crazy how we do get silenced, but you know what? That just means that we speak up louder than ever before, because what do we always say? This is the voice of reason. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. This is the voice of reason. We'll have some more fun tomorrow. What do you say to wrap up your week on a Friday? Everybody have a great Thursday.